3 weeks after Captain Jake Morrison returned from his meeting with the Zephyrians, a massive alien ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. It was bigger than anything humans had ever built, bigger than their largest space stations. The ship just sat there, silent and dark, like a giant metal mountain floating in space. President Maria Santos had not slept well since hearing Jake's report. Now, looking at the alien ship through her office window at the Global Command Center, she felt even more worried. The ship had been there for 6 hours and no one knew what it wanted. "Madam President, we're getting a transmission," said General Lisa Martinez, walking into the office with a tablet in her hands. Lisa had been in the military for 20 years and had never looked scared before. Today, she looked scared. "Put it on the main screen," President Santos said. The large screen on the wall flickered, and suddenly, they were looking at an alien face. It was not Throcknall. This alien was bigger, with more scars on his blue-gray skin and eyes that burned like yellow fire. When he spoke, his voice was deeper and more frightening than Throcknall's had been. "I am Supreme Overlord Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. I speak to the leaders of the human species." President Santos stepped forward. "I'm President Maria Santos of Earth's United Government. What do you want?" "I want nothing from you, human. I am here to give you our final command. Your Captain Morrison spoke with our Warcast commander 3 weeks ago. You have had time to consider our words." "We're still considering our response," President Santos said carefully. Vextar's yellow eyes narrowed. "There is nothing to consider. You will obey, or you will die. I am here to make our demands clear, so there can be no confusion." The alien leaned forward, and President Santos could see rows of sharp teeth. "Your species will abandon all colonies beyond your home system within 30 standard days. You will recall all your exploration ships. You will disarm your military vessels. And you will accept Zephyrian governors on your home world to ensure you obey our commands." President Santos felt her heart pounding, but she kept her voice steady. "And if we refuse? Then your species will join the 1,000 others we have destroyed. Your planets will burn. Your ships will be scattered dust. Your children will never see the stars again." The transmission ended, and the room was silent. President. Santos turned to General Martinez. "Get me Admiral Tucker and the Defense Council. Now." An hour later, the emergency meeting began. The Global Defense Council had never met under such serious conditions. Around the long table sat the most powerful people in human space. President. Santos, Admiral Ben Tucker, who commanded the Space Defense Force, General Martinez, and 12 other military and civilian leaders. Admiral Tucker was a big man with white hair and tired eyes. He had been in space longer than anyone else in the room. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "I've been studying the alien ship since it arrived. Our best estimates say it has weapons powerful enough to destroy a small moon. And that's just one ship." "How many ships do they have?" asked Dr. Peter Adams, the director of the Xenobiology Institute. He was a thin man who usually studied alien plants and animals, but now he was trying to understand alien minds. Admiral Tucker touched. His tablet and new images appeared on the room's screens. "Our long-range sensors have detected a Zephyrian fleet gathering 3 light-years from here. At least 200 ships, maybe more. Each one is larger than our biggest warship." The room was quiet. Everyone was looking at the pictures of the alien fleet. The ships looked like a swarm of metal insects, ready to destroy everything in their path. "What about our own fleet?" President Santos asked. "We have 89 active warships scattered across 12 systems," Admiral Tucker replied. "If we called them all back to Earth, we might be able to fight off a small attack. But against 200 alien ships with superior technology?" He shook his head. "We'd lose badly." Colonel Nick Johnson, who ran the military's intelligence operations, leaned forward. "My teams have been analyzing everything we know about Zephyrian technology. Their ships are faster than ours. Their weapons are more powerful, and their shields are stronger. In a direct fight, we don't have a chance." "What about their weaknesses?" General Martinez asked. Dr. Adams answered that question. "I've been studying their culture based on the recordings from Captain Morrison's meeting. The Zephyrians are conquerors. They've been doing this for thousands of years. They're used to other species surrendering without a fight." "That's not a weakness," Colonel Johnson pointed out. "Maybe it is," Dr. Adams said. "They expect easy victories. They might not be prepared for a species that fights back hard, even when losing." President Santos stood up and walked to the window. The alien ship was still there, dark and threatening. "What are our options?" Admiral Tucker pulled up a new screen. "Option 1. We surrender completely, give up our colonies, accept their governors, and hope they let us live as slaves." "That's not an option," President Santos said firmly. "Option 2. We evacuate Earth and try to hide in deep space. Maybe some humans could survive in secret colonies. Also not acceptable, we're not abandoning our home." Admiral Tucker nodded. "Option 3. We fight. We call back every ship, arm every citizen, and make them pay for every planet they take from us." "What are our chances if we fight?" President Santos asked. "Honestly, maybe 5%, maybe 10% if we get lucky." The room was silent again. Everyone knew what those numbers meant. Fighting the Zephyrians would probably mean the end of humanity. "There is a fourth option," Colonel Johnson said slowly. "We could pretend to surrender while secretly preparing for war. Let them think we're beaten, then strike when they're not expecting it." "That's still fighting," General Martinez said, "just with extra steps." President Santos walked back to the table and sat down. She looked at each person in the room. These were the smartest, most experienced people humanity had. If they could not find a way to win, no one could. "How long do we have?" she asked. "The ultimatum gives us 30 days, Admiral Tucker said. "But I'd guess they'll attack sooner if they think we're preparing for war." "And if we surrender," Dr. Adams answered, "based on their history, they'll place governors on Earth to control us. They'll take our technology, our resources, our people. Some humans might survive, but we'd never be free again." President Santos closed her eyes and thought about her daughter, who was studying art in New London Colony. She thought about the millions of families living on human worlds across the galaxy. She thought about the children who would never grow up if the Zephyrians destroyed humanity. "I need to address the people," she said finally. "They deserve to know what we're facing." That evening, President Santos appeared on every screen in human space. Her broadcast reached Earth, the 12 colony worlds, and every human ship traveling between the stars. She told them about the Zephyrian ultimatum. She told them about the alien fleet waiting to attack, and she told them that humanity faced the greatest threat in its history. "My fellow humans," she said, looking directly into the camera, "I will not lie to you. We are outgunned and outnumbered. The Zephyrians have weapons we can barely understand and ships that make our fleet look like toys. If we fight them, many of us will die. Maybe all of us will die." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But I know humanity. I know our history. We have faced extinction before. We survived ice ages that should have killed us. We survived plagues that killed half our people. We survived wars that burned continents. We survived because we never, ever give up." President Santos stood up, and her voice got stronger. "The Zephyrians think we are weak because we are young. They think we will surrender because other species have surrendered to them. They are wrong. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity does not kneel. Humanity fights." She leaned closer to the camera. "I am not ordering anyone to fight. This is a choice each of you must make. But I am choosing to fight. I would rather die free than live as a slave. I would rather see humanity destroyed than see humanity broken." The broadcast ended, and President Santos waited to see how her people would respond. She did not have to wait long. Within hours, the response began. Military recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. Factories started converting to military production without being ordered to. Scientists began working, day and night, to improve human weapons. Even children started collecting metal and other materials for the war effort. The Zephyrians had made a mistake. They thought they were threatening a weak species that would surrender easily. Instead, they had threatened the one species in the galaxy that got stronger when cornered. Admiral Tucker came to see President Santos the next morning. He looked different, younger somehow, despite his white hair. "Madam President, we're getting reports from across human space. Every colony is volunteering to help. Every ship is requesting weapons upgrades. We're not just preparing for war. We're preparing for total war." President Santos nodded. "How long before we're ready?" "If we push everything to maximum effort, 6 months, maybe 8. The aliens won't wait that long. Then we'll fight with what we have," Admiral Tucker said. "And we'll make them regret ever hearing the name human." President Santos stood in front of the camera for the second time in a month. This time, she was not speaking to humanity. She was speaking to the Zephyrian Empire, and her message was simple, but dangerous. "Supreme Overlord Vextar," she began, "humanity has considered your ultimatum. We will not abandon our colonies, and we will not accept your authority over Earth. However, we are willing to continue diplomatic discussions to find a peaceful solution." She turned off the recording and looked at Admiral Tucker, who was standing behind the camera. "Think they'll accept?" Admiral Tucker shook his head. "No, but it might buy us some time." They were wrong about the time. 3 hours later, the Zephyrian response came. It was not a message. It was an attack. The colony world of New Geneva was home to 2.3 million people. Most of them were farmers who grew food for other human colonies. It was a peaceful world with green hills, blue rivers, and small towns where everyone knew their neighbors. It had no military bases and only a small defense fleet of 3 ships. Captain Steve Rodriguez commanded the UES Defender, the largest of the 3 defense ships. He was drinking coffee in his cabin when the alarms started screaming. His first officer, Lieutenant Sam Bradley, burst through the door. "Captain, we have incoming ships, big ones." Steve ran to the bridge and looked at the sensor display. 27 Zephyrian warships were approaching New Geneva at high speed. His 3 small ships had no chance against them, but Steve was not. "The kind of man who ran from a fight. Send an emergency message to Earth," he ordered. "Tell them New Geneva is under attack, then charge weapons and prepare to fight." Down on the planet's surface, Major Claire Thompson was in charge of the colony's emergency systems. She was a former military officer who had retired to New Geneva to start a family. When the warning came from Captain Rodriguez's ship, she immediately activated the evacuation procedures. "This is not a drill," she announced over the colony's communication system. "All civilians report to evacuation centers immediately. This is not a drill." The evacuation centers were underground shelters built to protect people from natural disasters like earthquakes or solar storms. They were never meant to protect against alien warships, but they were the best shelter the colony had. In space, above the planet, the battle was short and brutal. Captain Rodriguez and his crew fought with everything they had, but the Zephyrian ships were too powerful. The UES Defender lasted 12 minutes before its shields failed and its hull was torn apart. Captain Rodriguez's last message was simple. "Tell Earth we did not surrender." The other 2 human ships lasted even less time. Within 20 minutes of the first attack, New Geneva's entire defense fleet was destroyed. Warcast Commander Throcknall led the Zephyrian attack from his flagship. He had been given specific orders from Supreme Overlord Vextar. "Make an example of this human colony. Show the galaxy what happens to species that defy the Zephyrian Empire." "Begin orbital bombardment," Throcknall commanded. "Target all military installations first, then government buildings, then transportation hubs. The Zephyrian ships opened fire with weapons that could melt mountains. Beams of superheated plasma struck the planet's surface, creating explosions that could be seen from space. The colony's spaceport disappeared in a ball of fire. The government center was reduced to molten glass. But Throcknall was not satisfied with destroying military targets. Supreme Overlord Vextar had ordered him to make an example, and examples needed to be visible. Examples needed to create fear. Expand targeting to include population centers, he ordered. Focus on areas with high civilian concentrations. Some of his officers looked uncomfortable with the order, but none of them questioned it. The Zephyrian military followed orders without question. Major Thompson watched from the main evacuation center as her world burned. The underground shelter's screens showed the destruction happening above. Schools where children learned to read were turned to ash. Hospitals where doctors saved lives were melted to slag. Entire neighborhoods where families lived and loved were wiped off the planet's surface. "How many people have we evacuated?" she asked her assistant, Sergeant Danny Wells. 340,000, ma'am. But there are still over 1 million people in the outer settlements. The transportation network is destroyed. We can't reach them. Major Thompson closed her eyes. She had served in the military for 15 years before retiring, but she had never faced anything like this. The Zephyrians were not just destroying military targets. They were killing innocent people who had never hurt anyone. "Keep trying," she said. "Save everyone we can." The bombardment continued for 6 hours. When it finally stopped, New Geneva was a broken world. The green hills were burned black. The blue rivers were boiled away. The small towns where everyone knew their neighbors were nothing but craters in the ground. Throcknall's ship landed near the main evacuation center. He walked out with a squad of Zephyrian soldiers, their weapons ready. Major Thompson met them at the entrance to the shelter. "I am Major Claire Thompson, Emergency Coordinator for New Geneva Colony. I demand to know why you attacked our civilian population." Throcknall looked down at the small human woman. She was not even as tall as his chest, but she stood straight and met his yellow eyes without fear. "You demand?" he said. "You are in no position to demand anything, human. Your colony is destroyed. Your people are dead or defeated. You exist only because I allow it." "Our people are not defeated," Major Thompson said. "And we're not afraid of you." Throcknall gestured to one of his soldiers, who activated a recording device. "Speak your surrender, human. Tell your species that resistance is useless." Major Thompson looked directly into the recording device. "I am Major Claire Thompson of New Geneva Colony. Today, the Zephyrians attacked our world without warning. They destroyed our cities and killed our people. But they did not defeat us. They will never defeat us. Humanity does not surrender." She turned back to Throcknall. "Do what you want to me. But know this. Every human who sees this recording will know what you really are. Not conquerors, not warriors, just murderers who kill innocent people." Throcknall struck her down with one of his 4 arms. Major Thompson fell to the ground, but immediately started to get back up. Throcknall gestured again, and his soldiers opened fire. Major Thompson died still trying to stand, but her words had been recorded. Within hours, the recording was being broadcast across Zephyrian space as propaganda, showing how easily humans could be defeated. The Zephyrians did not understand that they had just made the biggest mistake in their empire's 3,000-year history. On Earth, President Santos watched the recording of New Geneva's destruction with tears in her eyes. The images of burned cities and dead children filled the screens of the Global Command Center. But it was Major Thompson's final words that hit her the hardest. "Humanity does not surrender." Admiral Tucker entered the room as the recording ended. His face was pale with anger. "Madam President, we're getting reports from across human space. The New Geneva recording has reached every colony, every ship, every human settlement." "What kind of reports?" "Military recruitment has increased by 500% in the last 4 hours. Every factory in human space is converting to military production. Scientists are working around the clock on new weapons projects, and civilians are volunteering for combat training. President Santos wiped the tears from her eyes. The Zephyrians think they've shown us what happens when we resist them. Instead, they've shown us what happens to our people when we don't resist hard enough, Admiral Tucker said grimly. Across human space, the reaction to New Geneva was swift and total. On the colony world of New Boston, factory worker Danny Cooper quit his job and enlisted in the Space Marines the same day. On Luna Station, college student Rachel Kim abandoned her engineering studies to join the military research program. On Mars, retired Admiral Tom Bradley came out of retirement and requested immediate assignment to active combat duty. Captain Jake Morrison, still traumatized from his first meeting with the Zephyrians, requested transfer to the front lines. When asked why, he gave a simple answer. "My sister Ellen lived on New Geneva. She was a teacher. She taught children how to read." Ellen Morrison had died in the bombardment, along with 37 of her students. The Zephyrians had expected their attack on New Geneva to terrorize humanity into submission. Instead, it had awakened something in the human species that had been sleeping since the end of their last world war. It was something that had helped humanity survive every challenge their dangerous home world had thrown at them. It was something that had driven them from caves to the stars. It was rage, pure, focused, intelligent rage. Dr. Sarah Foster was a xenopsychologist who studied alien minds and behavior. 3 days after New Geneva, she was called to brief President Santos and the Defense Council about Zephyrian psychology. "The Zephyrians made a critical error," she explained. "They've studied our technology and our military capabilities, but they never studied our history or our psychology." "What do you mean?" President Santos asked. "Humans are pack hunters, madam." "President, we evolved that way on Earth. When something threatens our pack, our family, our tribe, our species, we don't just defend ourselves. We hunt down the threat and destroy it completely." Dr. Foster pulled up images of human history on the main screen. "Look at our wars. The news of New Geneva reached Earth exactly 47 minutes after the last bomb fell. President Santos was in a meeting when her assistant burst through the door with a tablet showing the first images of the destroyed colony. The president looked at the pictures for 10 seconds, then quietly excused herself from the meeting. She walked to her private bathroom and threw up. An hour later, she stood before the cameras again. This time, her speech was different. Her voice was steady, but there was something new in her eyes, something cold and hard that had not been there before. "People of humanity," she began. "1 hour ago, the Zephyrian Empire attacked the colony of New Geneva. They killed nearly 2 million innocent civilians, including children, teachers, doctors, and farmers. They did this not because New Geneva threatened them, but because they wanted to scare us into surrender." She paused. And when she spoke again, her voice was quieter but somehow more frightening. "They succeeded in scaring me, but not in the way they intended. I am scared of what we are about to become." Within 6 hours of the broadcast, something happened that no government in human history had ever seen. Military recruitment centers across human space were overwhelmed by volunteers. Not hundreds of volunteers, not thousands, millions. Danny Cooper had worked at the same factory on New Boston for 8 years. He assembled parts for civilian spacecraft and had never thought about joining the military. He was 26 years old, married, with a 2-year-old daughter named Emma. The day after New Geneva, he walked into the local recruitment center and signed up for the Space Marines. "Why do you want to enlist?" asked the recruiting officer, a sergeant named Mike Davis. Danny thought about the pictures he had seen from New Geneva. He thought about his daughter Emma, who was learning to walk and loved to chase their cat around the house. "Because I want Emma to grow up in a universe where monsters like the Zephyrians don't exist anymore," Danny was not unusual. Across the 12 human colonies, similar scenes were playing out. Rachel Kim was a 20-year-old engineering student on Luna Station. She had 2 more years left in school and had planned to design civilian structures on new colony worlds. The day after New Geneva, she dropped out of school and joined the Military Engineering Corps. "I can build cities later," she told her parents. "Right now, I need to build weapons." On Mars, retired Admiral Tom Bradley was 73 years old and had not worn a uniform in 8 years. He had served in the resource wars and earned every medal the human military could give. He was supposed to be spending his remaining years in a comfortable retirement, playing with his grandchildren and writing his memoirs. The day after New Geneva, he put his uniform back on and reported for duty. "Admiral Bradley," said the young officer at Mars Command Center, "you're not on the active duty roster." "I am now," Tom replied, "and I want a ship." This scene repeated itself on every human world and station. Veterans came out of retirement. Civilians abandoned their jobs to join the military. Scientists stopped their research projects to work on weapons. Factory workers converted their production lines to military equipment without being ordered to do so. But the most surprising thing was how quickly humanity adapted to the idea of total war. Dr. Kevin Park had spent his career studying alien technology from artifacts found on dead worlds. He was a peaceful man who had never hurt anyone in his life. 3 days after New Geneva, he was leading a team of 50 scientists in a project to reverse engineer Zephyrian weapons technology. "Sir, this weapon design is incredibly destructive," his assistant, Dr. Jenny Liu, said as they examined captured Zephyrian equipment. "It's designed to cause maximum damage to living tissue." "Good," Dr. Park replied without looking up from his work. "Make it more destructive." Dr. Liu stared at him. She had worked with Dr. Park for 5 years and had never heard him speak like that before. "Sir, are you saying we should design weapons specifically to kill Zephyrians?" Dr. Park finally looked up from his work. His eyes were tired, but there was something new in them, something that Dr. Liu had never seen before. "Jenny, the Zephyrians came to our space and told us to surrender or die. When we refused to surrender, they murdered 2 million innocent people to scare us. Now they're planning to kill all of us." He turned back to his work. "Yes, I'm saying we should design weapons specifically to kill Zephyrians, as many as possible, as efficiently as possible." This conversation was happening in laboratories across human space. Scientists who had spent their lives trying to heal disease were now working to create better ways to cause death. Engineers who had built hospitals and schools were designing warships and weapons. Teachers who had educated children were training civilians for combat. Admiral Tucker walked through the corridors of the main military research facility on Luna and saw things that amazed and frightened him. In one lab, Dr. Lisa Foster was working on a project to weaponize human medical knowledge. "Admiral, we've been studying Zephyrian biology from the tissue samples Captain Morrison collected during his first meeting," she explained. "We're developing biological weapons that will target their specific physiology." "Is that legal under our war crimes conventions?" Admiral Tucker asked. Dr. Foster looked at him with the same cold expression he was seeing everywhere lately. "Admiral, our war crimes conventions were written for wars against humans. The Zephyrians burned children alive on New Geneva. I don't think our conventions apply anymore." In another lab, former civilian engineer Mark Stevens was designing something that looked like a standard human warship, but with modifications that made Admiral Tucker nervous. "It's a ramming ship," Mark explained. "Heavily armored, minimal crew, maximum speed. When our other weapons fail, we ram it straight into their biggest ships." "That's a suicide mission," Admiral Tucker pointed out. "Yes, sir. We've already got 300 volunteers for the first ship." Admiral Tucker left the facility deeply troubled. Humanity was preparing for war with an efficiency and determination that scared him. But what scared him more was how easily humans were abandoning the moral restrictions they had developed over centuries of civilization. President Santos called him to a private meeting that evening. Ben, I'm getting reports from across human space that worry me, she said. Our people are preparing for a war without limits. They're designing weapons that violate every rule of warfare we've ever established. Admiral Tucker sat down heavily. Maria, I've been thinking the same thing. We're not just preparing to fight the Zephyrians, we're preparing to exterminate them. Is that necessarily a bad thing? President Santos asked quietly. Admiral Tucker stared at her. What did you just say? The Zephyrians have destroyed 1,000 civilizations, Ben. They came to our space and demanded our surrender. When we refused, they murdered 2 million civilians. They've made it clear that they intend to wipe out humanity completely. She stood up and walked to the window. Maybe it's time someone wiped them out completely instead. Admiral Tucker realized that President Santos had changed, just like everyone else. The woman who had always insisted on following international law and human rights conventions was now talking about genocide as if it were a reasonable military strategy. Maria, if we become like them, what's the point of winning? President Santos turned around, and Admiral Tucker saw the same cold hardness in her eyes that he had been seeing everywhere. The point of winning, Ben, is that our children get to live. The Zephyrians have shown us what happens to civilizations that lose to them. They don't just conquer, they destroy, they erase entire species from existence. She sat back down. I'd rather have our children alive in a universe where we've done terrible things than have them dead in a universe where we stayed pure. That night, Admiral Tucker could not sleep. He walked through the corridors of Earth's main military base and saw something that would have been impossible 6 months earlier. Human soldiers were training with the intensity he had never seen before. Not just training to fight, but training to win at any cost. He stopped to watch a group of Marines practicing boarding techniques. Their instructor, Sergeant Kate Wilson, was explaining how to clear an alien ship of hostile crew members. Remember, Marines, Zephyrians are bigger and stronger than humans, but they have 4 arms instead of 2. That means their balance is different. Aim for the center joints on their legs. When they fall, they can't get up as quickly as we can. One of the Marines, a young man named Paul Garcia, raised his hand. Sergeant, what if we encounter Zephyrian civilians? Sergeant Wilson did not hesitate in her answer. There are no Zephyrian civilians, Marine. Every Zephyrian is a potential threat to humanity. Treat them accordingly. Admiral Tucker walked away feeling sick. The human military had always prided itself on protecting non-combatants and following the rules of war. Now they were training soldiers to treat an entire species as enemies to be destroyed. But as he thought about the images from New Geneva, the burned schools, the destroyed hospitals, the bodies of children in the rubble, he found it harder to argue with the new approach. The next morning, he received a report that both impressed and terrified him. In just 3 months since New Geneva, humanity had increased its military production by 600%. 6 months after the destruction of New Geneva, Admiral Ben Tucker stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution and looked at the largest human fleet ever assembled. 412 warships floated in formation around him, each one designed for a single purpose: to destroy the Zephyrian Empire. The Retribution itself was humanity's first dreadnought, a ship so large it could carry smaller warships inside its hull. It had been built in just 4 months by workers who labored 20 hours a day, 7 days a week. The ship's main weapon was something the scientists called a planet cracker, a weapon designed to destroy Zephyrian homeworlds if necessary. Admiral, all ships report ready, said Captain Jake Morrison from his position at the Fleet Coordination Station. Jake had requested assignment to the Retribution specifically because it would be leading the assault into Zephyrian space. His sister Ellen had died on New Geneva, and he wanted to be there when humanity got its revenge. Admiral Tucker nodded. Signal the fleet. Operation Hammerfall begins now. The human fleet jumped to hyperspace, heading for the heart of Zephyrian territory. Their target was the Kepler 442 system, where the Zephyrians had their main military base, Intelligence reports suggested that Supreme Overlord Vextar himself was there, commanding the Empire's forces. The journey took 3 days. During that time, Admiral Tucker walked through the ship and talked to his crew. What he saw both inspired and worried him. These were not the same humans who had first encountered the Zephyrians 8 months ago. They were harder, colder, and absolutely determined to win at any cost. Lieutenant Amy Chen, who had been with Captain Morrison during the first contact meeting, was now the Retribution's weapons coordinator. Admiral Tucker found her in the weapons control room, running final checks on the ship's arsenal. "Lieutenant, how are our weapons systems?" Amy looked up from her console. Her face was thinner than it had been 8 months ago, and her eyes held no warmth at all. "All weapons operational, Admiral. The planet Cracker is charged and ready. The biological weapons are loaded. The ramming drones are armed." "Ramming drones?" "Unmanned ships loaded with explosives, sir. When we encounter Zephyrian ships too heavily shielded for our regular weapons, we ram these drones into them at maximum speed." Admiral Tucker had not heard about the ramming drones before. "Who authorized those weapons?" "President Santos personally approved them, sir. She said we needed weapons that could guarantee kills even against superior enemy defenses." In another part of the ship, Admiral Tucker found Dr. Kevin Park supervising the loading of the biological weapons that his team had developed. These were not the clean, precise weapons that humanity had traditionally used in warfare. These were designed to cause maximum suffering to Zephyrian biology. "Doctor, are you certain these weapons will be effective?" Dr. Park looked up from his work. Like everyone else, he had changed over the past months. The peaceful scientist had become something much more dangerous. "Admiral, these weapons will target Zephyrian respiratory systems, nervous systems, and cellular structure simultaneously. Death will be neither quick nor painless." He paused. "That's intentional." "Doctor, that sounds like we're designing weapons specifically to torture our enemies." "Yes, sir. That's exactly what we're doing." Dr. Park returned to his work. "The Zephyrians tortured 2 million civilians on New Geneva. Now they get to experience what torture feels like." Admiral Tucker left the weapons bay feeling deeply disturbed. Humanity had not just prepared for war, they had prepared for the systematic destruction of an entire species. He wondered if they had gone too far, but every time he had that thought, he remembered the images from New Geneva. On the 3rd day of the journey, the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they found there shocked even Admiral Tucker. "Admiral, sensors are detecting over 300 Zephyrian ships," reported the sensor operator, a young ensign named Bobby Martinez. "They're in defensive formation around their main base." Admiral Tucker studied the tactical display. The Zephyrian fleet was impressive, but it was not as large as he had expected. Intelligence had suggested they might face up to 500 enemy ships. Where are the rest of their ships? He wondered aloud. Captain Morrison answered that question. "Sir, we're getting reports from our intelligence network. The Zephyrians have been recalling ships from across their empire to defend their home worlds. They're not expecting us to attack here." Admiral Tucker smiled for the first time in months. "They think we're going to defend Earth and our colonies. They don't realize we're bringing the war to them." The battle began 2 hours later. The human fleet moved in formation, with the largest ships in front and the smaller, faster ships on the flanks. The Zephyrians met them halfway between their base and the system's edge. The first exchange of fire lit up space like a new star. Zephyrian plasma beams struck human shields, while human kinetic weapons tore through alien armor. Ships on both sides exploded in brilliant flashes of light. But something was different about this battle. The humans were not fighting defensively, trying to minimize losses and protect their ships. They were fighting to destroy every single Zephyrian vessel, regardless of the cost to themselves. Captain Jake Morrison commanded a squadron of fast attack ships. His mission was to break through the Zephyrian lines and target their command ships. When his flagship's engines were damaged, By enemy fire, he did not retreat for repairs. "All ships, follow me," he ordered. "Ram the Zephyrian dreadnought, full speed." "Sir, that's suicide," his weapons officer protested. "No," Jake replied, thinking of his sister Ellen. "That's revenge." Jake's ship, moving at maximum velocity, struck the Zephyrian dreadnought just below its main weapons array. The explosion was visible across the entire battle zone. Jake died instantly, but his sacrifice crippled the enemy's most powerful ship. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human ships that would normally retreat when heavily damaged instead threw themselves at Zephyrian vessels. Human captains who would normally surrender when their ships were doomed instead triggered their self-destruct systems while ramming enemy ships. Commander Ryan Hayes led a boarding party onto a damaged Zephyrian cruiser. Instead of following normal boarding procedures, secure the ship, capture prisoners, gather intelligence, his team had different orders. "Kill everything that moves," Ryan ordered as his Marines spread through the alien ship. "No prisoners, no survivors." The boarding action lasted 30 minutes. When it was over, every Zephyrian on the ship was dead. Ryan's team had suffered heavy casualties, but they had accomplished their mission, complete extermination of the enemy crew. But the most shocking moment of the battle came when Dr. Kevin Park's biological weapons were deployed. Human ships fired specially designed missiles that broke apart in the Zephyrian fleet, releasing clouds of engineered pathogens. Admiral Tucker watched on his screens as Zephyrian ships began to drift helplessly. Emergency broadcasts from the alien vessels showed crew members collapsing in agony as the biological agents attacked their systems. "Admiral, the biological weapons are working perfectly," reported Dr. Park from the science station. "Zephyrian crews are being incapacitated across their entire fleet." Admiral Tucker felt sick as he watched alien warriors dying in obvious pain. "Doctor, can we make the weapons work faster? End their suffering more quickly?" Dr. Park looked at him with cold eyes. "No, sir. The weapons are designed to work slowly. We want the Zephyrians to have time to understand what's happening to them." The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, the entire Zephyrian fleet had been destroyed. Not a single enemy ship escaped. Admiral Tucker's fleet had lost 87 vessels, but they had achieved total victory. More importantly, they had captured the Zephyrian command base and its most important prisoner, Supreme Overlord Vextar himself. Admiral Tucker met with the alien leader in the base's detention center. Vextar was chained to a wall, his forearms secured with restraints designed specifically for Zephyrian anatomy. The proud alien warrior who had threatened to destroy humanity 8 months ago now looked broken and defeated. "Your empire is finished," Admiral Tucker told him. "We're tracking down every Zephyrian fleet in the galaxy. Within a year, your species will be extinct." Captain Jake Morrison sat in his command chair aboard the exploration ship Phoenix. The stars outside looked peaceful, but the message on his screen made his blood run cold. The transmission had come directly from Galactic Council headquarters, marked with the highest priority codes. "All Earth vessels return home immediately. Vorthon War Fleet approaching Sol System. Estimated arrival in 72 hours. Jake read the message 3 times before it sank in. The Vorthans were coming to Earth. Nobody attacked Earth. That was the one rule everyone in the galaxy knew. The galactic law was clear about it. Earth was off limits to everyone. He pressed the communication button. "Lieutenant Cooper, get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command." The young officer at the communications station looked worried. "Sir, should I inform the crew?" "Not yet. Let me talk to Command first." Minutes later, Commander Lisa Grant's face appeared on the main screen. She looked tired, like she had not slept in days. Behind her, Jake could see the busy control room of Earth's defense headquarters. "Jake, thank God you got the message. How fast can you get the Phoenix back home?" 12 hours if I push the engines hard. Lisa, what's going on? Why are the Vorthons coming here? Lisa rubbed her forehead. We don't know. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors picked up a massive fleet leaving Vorthon space. 200 ships. Maybe more. They're heading straight for us. Jake felt his stomach drop. 200 Vorthon ships. Earth had exactly 12 vessels that could even be called military ships. The Phoenix was one of them, and it was designed for exploration, not fighting. What does the Galactic Council say? They're sending diplomatic messages, trying to contact the Vorthon fleet. So far, no response. Jake, I need you to understand something. This has never happened before. In 200 years, nobody has even thought about attacking Earth. The law protects us. That's what we always believed. But laws only work if people follow them. The transmission ended, and Jake stared at the blank screen. He had grown up hearing stories about the galactic law. Every human child learned about it in school. Long ago, before humans had even learned to travel between stars, someone had written a law that said Earth could never be attacked. The law was older than the Galactic Council itself. Nobody remembered who wrote it or why. Sir, Lieutenant Cooper, was waiting for orders. Set course for Earth, maximum speed, and send a message to the crew. Tell them we're going home. As the Phoenix changed direction and jumped to hyperspace, Jake thought about the Vorthons. They were the most feared warriors. In 3 galaxies, their ships were fast and deadly. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight. They had conquered 47 worlds in the last century alone, but they had never touched Earth. On the Vorthon flagship Deathbringer, War Master Krex studied the tactical display. His species was tall and covered in thick gray skin that could stop bullets. His 4 arms ended in claws sharp enough to cut metal. His red eyes never showed fear. War Master, said his second-in-command, the human world grows larger on our screens. Krex nodded. Good. Have you studied the intelligence? Reports about these humans? Yes, sir, they are weak. Only 12 ships in their entire fleet. Their weapons are old and slow. Their soldiers have never seen real war. And yet, there is this law that protects them. The younger Vorthon made a sound like laughter. Ancient words written by dead civilizations. We have conquered worlds protected by stronger laws. Krex was not so sure. In his long career, he had learned to respect the unknown, but his people expected victory. The Vorthon Council had chosen Earth as their next target because it seemed easy, a world full of weak creatures hiding behind old laws. Maintain course, he ordered, but keep all sensors active. I want to know about every rock in this system. Back. On Earth, Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked late in her laboratory. She was the planet's leading expert on alien life, but tonight she was not studying biology. She was reading history. The message about the Vorthon fleet had reached Earth 6 hours ago. While the military prepared their defenses, Amy had been tasked with researching the galactic law. Someone needed to understand exactly what protected Earth and why. What she found worried her. The law was written in a language that no longer existed. The original text had been translated many times over thousands of years, but even in translation, the words were strange. The third world of the yellow star shall remain untouched. The children of the gardeners must be allowed to grow. This compact is sealed with the power of those who came before. Amy read the text again. Children of the gardeners? What did that mean? And who were those who came before? She pulled up more historical records. The Galactic Council had formed 8,000 years ago. The law protecting Earth was much older. Some experts thought it might be 50,000 years old, maybe older. Her computer beeped with an incoming message. It was from her colleague, Dr. Ben Parker, who worked at the archaeological site on Mars. Amy, something strange is happening here. The ruins are showing activity for the first time since we started studying them. The energy readings are off the charts. What's going on back home? Amy quickly typed a response explaining about the Vorthan fleet. Then she sat back in her chair, thinking. Mars had ruins. So did several other worlds in human space. Nobody knew who had built them. The structures were incredibly old and made from materials that human science could barely understand. They had been silent and dead for as long as humans had known about them until now. Commander Lisa Grant stood in Earth's main defense center watching the tactical display. 12 green dots represented Earth's entire military force. The Phoenix was still hours away. The other 11 ships were already in position around Earth. "Ma'am," said Lieutenant Danny Walsh from the communications station, "I'm getting reports from civilian traffic in the outer system. Ships are seeing strange lights near the asteroid belt." "What kind of lights?" "Unknown, ma'am. The reports say they look like stars turning on and off." Lisa frowned. Space was full of rocks and ice, but rocks did not make lights. "Send a probe to investigate. And get me Admiral Torres on the line." Admiral Carlos Torres commanded Earth's small space navy. He was a good man, but Lisa knew he was as worried as everyone else. His ships were not designed to fight Vorthans. When Torres appeared on screen, his expression was grim. "Lisa, I've been looking at our options. We can try to delay them, make them think twice. But in a real fight, we'll last maybe 10 minutes. "What? About the law?" "Laws don't stop laser cannons. We have to hope the Galactic Council can talk sense into them." But even as Torres spoke, both of them knew the truth. The Vorthans had not built the most feared military in the galaxy by listening to diplomats. On the edge of the solar system, Pluto drifted in the cold darkness. Its surface was covered with frozen nitrogen and methane. Nothing lived there. Nothing had ever lived there. But deep beneath the ice, something was waking up. The Vorthan fleet passed Pluto without noticing the faint energy signature that pulsed once, then went quiet. Their sensors were focused on the inner system, looking for human ships and weapons. They did not see the small objects that detached from Pluto's surface and began following them. War Master Krex studied the reports from his scouts. "The human fleet is pathetic. 11 ships in defensive positions around their world. One more ship approaching from outside the system. Shall we destroy them quickly, War Master?" Krex considered this. Quick victories were satisfying, but they taught nothing. "No. We will give them a chance to surrender. It will show the galaxy that we are reasonable conquerors." The irony was lost on him. Reasonable conquerors did not exist in Vorthan culture. The fleet moved past Neptune. More objects began following them. These came from Neptune's moons and from the rings of Saturn. Small, dark shapes that moved with purpose, but registered as nothing more than space debris on Vorthan sensors. On Earth, people looked up at the sky and wondered if they would live to see tomorrow. The news broadcasts tried to stay calm, but everyone knew the truth. The most dangerous military force in the galaxy was coming, and Earth had almost no way to stop them. But in laboratories and archaeological sites across the solar system, ancient machines were humming with power for the first time in 50,000 years. Dr. Rodriguez stared at her computer screen as energy readings spiked on Mars, Europa, Titan, and a dozen other locations. Something was responding to the threat. Something old and powerful and patient. The children of the gardeners were about to learn who their parents had been.